we all want to stay together. And so when you have guys that are motivated like that, you can get those things done.
I'm very worried about you with what you're saying. We got to keep Jamar Chase. We got to keep T. Higgins. We got to keep Trey Hendrickson. You got to keep a whole bunch. This is Cincinnati now.
I want to open this video by saying I have so much love and so much respect for Joe Burrow. I have so much love for the top quarterbacks of the AFC, whether it's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, or Joe Burrow. Honestly, I wish some of these quarterbacks played in the NFC because it seems like it's way harder to make it to the Super Bowl from the AFC as opposed to the NFC, where respectfully, all the NFC quarterbacks just seem to be great system QBs with very good supporting casts. But that's besides the point. Despite my respect for Joe Burrow, there's no question about it. This man has officially lost his mind. And this could really screw over the Bengals for years to come. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to get the latest NFL news to your device. And now that we got all that out of the way, work! Today's video is sponsored by Prize Picks. They're running a Super Bowl free square for Patrick Mahomes. Lately, I've been doing really well with my picks. I've been averaging at minimum a pick a day, and I've been making my followers a lot of money. I pretty much discovered that if you run 4-man power plays and you hit at least 1 out of every 10 4-man power plays, you 10x your money. So you break even if you hit 1 out of every 10 of your power plays, meaning you only need to hit 2 out of every 10 of your power plays to make money. So far, I've been averaging about 4 out of every 10 of my power plays hitting, and my results speak for itself. People have been hitting me up in my DMs thanking me as well. If you want to give it a shot, I give away my picks on Instagram at @TheFlightMike. And if you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, make sure you use my promo code Mikerophone to get a free $50 when you make a play of $5 or more. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Joe Burrow has been a breath of fresh air for the Cincinnati Bengals. Ever since being selected #1 overall in the 2020 NFL Draft, he's been nothing but incredible. Following his rookie season, the Cincinnati Bengals had a major decision to make. What do they do to support Joe Burrow? Do they get Penei Sewell to protect his blind side, or do they draft his buddy from LSU, Jamar Chase? Joe Burrow urged the Cincinnati Bengals to draft Jamar Chase, and the rest is history. The Cincinnati Bengals would make it to the Super Bowl in Jamar Chase's rookie season and would come close to defeating the LA Rams, but ultimately would lose. And since then, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals would have very unique seasons. I mean, in 2022, they would start out the season 2-3, but would finish off strong, winning their next 11 games and losing only 1 game, bulldozing through the Baltimore Ravens and Buffalo Bills before losing to the Kansas City Chiefs by 3 in the AFC Championship. In 2023, Joe Burrow would have an opportunity to sign a 5-year, $275 million contract extension, a contract that I was personally disappointed about. Burrow would surpass Justin Herbert to become the highest paid player in NFL history with an average annual salary of $55 million. The reason why I was disappointed by this decision is because Joe Burrow has clearly seen the model that brings success in the NFL. I'm not saying that quarterbacks are overpaid. I'm not saying that these poor owners need to spend way too much on quarterbacks and you should try to put more money in their pocket. What I am saying is, if you take a look at the way Patrick Mahomes has handled his career, it's very obvious that he's aware of the Tom Brady model.
Mahomes is the guy who they're either going to keep right under 200 or 200, but I think that's the line. And Key is saying, no, Mahomes will obliterate it.
He should obliterate it. He literally is the best quarterback in football. This is what every team wants. That guy. They have the guy. Like, reward him for what he's done in his short career already.
Yeah, I'll take Patrick Mahomes. You can have my whole team, and I'll just build a team around Patrick Mahomes.
Okay, like,
Literally,
we're good. Like, we're good.
And I bring this up frequently in my content. In order to win a Super Bowl, you need a lot of pieces in play. You need an incredible quarterback or solid role players around an above average quarterback. You need excellent coaching and game management. You need to make sure your funds are invested wisely. And in the case of the Kansas City Chiefs, they have arguably the best quarterback quarterback in the NFL, maybe even the greatest quarterback of all time when this is all said and done, on the 16th highest paid contract. This contract allows the Kansas City Chiefs to make huge investments in their team. Players like Chris Jones and Joe Thuney and Jawan Taylor and Creed Humphrey, in addition to Travis Kelce, to make Patrick Mahomes' job way easier. And ultimately, I believe this is the reason why Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady are able to win so many Super Bowls. They're relatively underpaid despite being within the top 3 best players at their position at the time that they're playing. They have excellent coaching and a remarkable supporting cast. And it seems like they're very aware that this needs to be done in order to win Super Bowls. But at the end of the day, it's worth it because when you win Super Bowls, you end up getting endorsement deals, you end up cultivating a following and a fan base, you're able to make up the difference in that money anyway. And when Joe Burrow accepted this 5-year, $275 million contract extension, he pretty much kissed his opportunities goodbye. Now I know what you might be saying, Mike, Jalen Hurts pretty much makes the same amount of money, but the Philadelphia Eagles found a way to cut costs around Jalen Hurts as well. Like last year, they extended AJ Brown a little bit sooner, they extended Devontae Smith incredibly quickly, they made sure his value didn't go too high, they got ahead of the curve with these contracts, and as a result, were able to sign Saquon Barkley. They also hit on their draft picks, so they don't need to extend those contracts for a while. And in the case of Jalen Hurts, you have a system QB with a remarkable supporting cast, but it doesn't really matter because they end up winning football games. So with that being said, Joe Burrow accepted a 5-year, $275 million contract extension, and in turn hasn't made it to the playoffs since signing this contract extension, primarily because he's been dealing with injuries, and the Bengals have this weird knack of always getting off to a terrible start to start the season. I don't know if it's a preparation thing, but in this past season in particular, the Bengals had a brand new problem. Their offense was the most prolific it's ever been in the Joe Burrow era, but the defense has never been this terrible. On top of this, the Cincinnati Bengals made a horrific mistake by not extending Jamar Chase as soon as possible. I mean, if you extended Jamar Chase last year, you would have probably had to pay him CeeDee Lamb money. In an ideal scenario, you pay Jamar Chase before Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb get their contract extensions. But now, since they took so long to extend Jamar Chase, instead of having the opportunity to extend him following a season where he had 1,216 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns, you now have to extend him after the best season of his career, where he had over 1,700 receiving yards and an absurd 17 touchdowns. And that's not the only problem. The Cincinnati Bengals have other really good players that are up for contract extensions, like Trey Hendrickson and T. Higgins, and this is where the problem starts. I mean, Jamar Chase has admitted to us that he's just toying with the Cincinnati Bengals at this point, because at this point, you do need to sign him to a better contract than Justin Jefferson. He was the best wide receiver in the NFL this past year, statistically speaking.
So I wish I could sign T myself and have him with me, for eternity.
Do you feel like there's a world in which the 3 of you can stay here and play here for the long term?
Yeah, it's possible. It's 100% possible, You gotta play chess in that situation, but it's possible.
And the worst part of all is Joe Burrow seems to be absolutely delusional about how to handle this situation.
You don't want to make a habit of letting great players get out of the building. T's a great player and a guy that does everything the right way. You have a guy like that, you just can't let him get out of the building.
The Cincinnati Bengals have $46.5 million in cap space this offseason. They're set to lose Orlando Brown Jr., Sam Hubbard, Alex Coppa, Sheldon Rankins, potentially Jamar Chase. I mean, there's a lot of ground this team needs to make up. Joe Burrow has a cap number of $46.2 million. That's going to increase to $48 million next year and $52.2 million the year after. Yet he's going around and just saying, hey, Bengals, just make it happen.
We have the cap space to get it done.
Right.
I want to make it happen. Everybody involved, Trey, T, Jamar, Mike G, we all want to stay together. And so when you have guys that are motivated like that, you can get those things done.
No, Joe Burrow thinks that it somehow, some way, despite having 2 wide receiver ones hitting the open market, that the Bengals, by some miracle, can get Jamar Chase back and T. Higgins back, and then at the same time sign Trey Hendrickson. But it's really funny because despite Joe Burrow saying this about Trey Hendrickson,
We need Trey back. We need to give him what he's worth and what he deserves. He's earned that.
I'm very worried about you with what you're saying. We got to keep Jamar Chase. We got to keep T. Higgins. We got to keep Trey Hendrickson. You got to keep a whole bunch. This is Cincinnati now. That ownership, you confident they're going to be willing to keep all of those guys?
The cap is going up each year. We just got new TV deals, so the cap's going to continue to go up.
TV money.
You know, we all want to stay together, so we're all going to do what it takes to do that.
Trey Hendrickson's going on the Pat McAfee show saying, I want to win the Bengals a Super Bowl, even if it means trading me for draft picks.
If it's something that helps the Bengals win a Super Bowl, if they get picks or anything like that, I want to help win a Super Bowl for Cincinnati if I'm there or not.
And look, I know what fans are going to be saying, but Mike, Joe Burrow could restructure his contract. And that is true. But fans think restructuring a contract means that Joe Burrow just goes up to the Bengals and says, hey, here's some of my money back. What restructuring a contract means is lessening Joe Burrow's cap hit for this season and pushing it towards the end of this contract. And this is where things get very problematic, because let's say you do bring back Jamar Chase and he's deciding to take a bit of a pay cut. He decides to get paid as much as CeeDee Lamb this year. CeeDee Lamb's cap number for this season is $35.4 million. That brings down the Cincinnati Bengals to $11.1 million of cap space. But then at the same time, Trey Hendrickson is in the scrub. You guys may have not been paying attention, but over the past 2 seasons, Trey Hendrickson has been arguably the best edge rusher in the entire NFL. The man had 17.5 sacks in the 2023 season and the 2024 season on one of the worst defenses in the entire NFL. Could you just imagine that? The man is entering his age 31 season. He's not going to take a pay cut to stay with the Cincinnati Bengals. So you might be wondering, how much would Trey Hendrickson make this year? Well, it's a pretty interesting range because there's a huge jump for edge rushers this past year. Nick Bosa was the most recent edge rusher to get extended at $34 million. Micah Parsons is set to get a contract extension, but he claims he's willing to take a pay cut, but I personally don't buy it. I personally expect Parsons to be at least $35 million, especially if you're going to make the argument that there's going to be new TV deals, so the cap's going to go up. So you need to pay Trey Hendrickson $35 million. You need to pay Jamar Chase minimum $34 or $35 million. And then comes the question of T. Higgins. If you want to take a look at the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, we already talked about it. This is what the table looks like. It's Justin Jefferson, then CeeDee Lamb, then AJ Brown. But let's say T. Higgins wants to do a favor for the Cincinnati Bengals and just get paid as the highest paid wide receiver 2 in the entire NFL. Well, the highest paid wide receiver 2 currently is Jalen Waddle at $28.25 million. And he's coming off of a pretty bad season for himself. Let's say he wants to do another solid. You know, maybe you get paid as much as Devontae Smith, which is $25 million a year. Do you guys see the problem at this point? You're not able to pay $25 million to T. Higgins, assuming he's willing to take a pay cut, and Trey Hendrickson $30 million, assuming that he's willing to take a bit of a pay cut as well. And then at the same time, pay Jamar Chase $35 million a year when you only have $46.5 million in cap space. Sure, it can be done, but even if it could be done, should it be done? Like for the Philadelphia Eagles, they were a fairly evenly balanced team, and even now, they currently have $18 million in cap space left over. Offensively and defensively, this team is loaded. There's a reason why they're in the Super Bowl. But the Cincinnati Bengals are a completely different story. This team is one of the worst defensive teams in the NFL, and one of the best offensive teams in the NFL as well. I don't think I've ever seen a season like this where Joe Burrow literally threw for nearly 5,000 passing yards, 43 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Jamar Chase had 1,700 receiving yards and 17 touchdowns, yet the Bengals weren't good enough to even make it into the playoffs. The clear need here is to invest in defense. And when you consider that with the fact that there's a lot of teams in need of a wide receiver 1 that do have cap space that are also contenders, I mean, T. Higgins has his pick of the litter. I mean, he could go to the Washington Commanders and team up with Terry McLaurin, and he'll have Jaden Daniels throwing him the ball for the rest of his career, and Cliff Kingsbury crafting an offense around it. T. Higgins could go to the New England Patriots and become the wide receiver 1 for Drake May and team up with Mike Vrabel. And the Patriots have $120 million in cap space. The Commanders have $78 million in cap space. I mean, T. Higgins could go to the Chargers. They have $63 million in cap space. They really need a wide receiver 1. Why would he take a pay cut to be the wide receiver 2 for the Bengals when all of these teams would have him in a higher role? It just doesn't make sense. At the end of the day, if Joe Burrow really wanted to retain Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, he would have signed for a little less money. If he just took $45 million a year, then that would have been more than enough at this point to make sure you keep your buddies afloat and have some money left over to invest in other aspects of the team. But he didn't decide to do that, did he? And I'm not calling him greedy, because at the end of the day, it's hard to turn down that amount of money. But as the old saying goes, you can't have your cake and eat it too. If I had to choose choose 2 out of 3, I would make sure I kept Trey Hendrickson and Jamar Chase. I think the Bengals made a horrific mistake not trading T. Higgins throughout the regular season, but what's done is done. I think what will probably happen is they'll try to tag and trade T. Higgins so they could at least get something in return for him, but I don't expect T. Higgins to be a member of the Bengals next year. I think that tag might be used on Trey Hendrickson instead because he's an older pass rusher. He's going into his age 31 season. But let me know in the comment section down below if you're a Bengals fan, how do you feel about this? Aside from that, I don't know if you heard, but Cooper Kupp is about to get traded. I made a whole separate video on that. I'll leave it in the end screen. And Russell Wilson's next chapter looks pretty unique. He might even team up with Pete Carroll on the Raiders. How? Well, we have a separate video on that as well. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.